And the concept, for all of how camp it was and a joke, I had no idea that it was a joke. It was my first exposure to the Batman, and what I saw, what I understood was here was a character. At the age of 8, he witnessed his parents killed. It just seems so senseless, the brutality, the tragedy, and ripped from a life of ease, comfort, affluence, all those kinds of things. Suddenly he was standing there, just witnessed his parents murdered before his eyes. And the story is about what a human being does in response to that. The comment that you made before about the willingness to stand up to evil, not to just give in, not just to succumb, to surrender, to just be rendered impotent in the face of that. So I used the Batman to process through that trauma. It was much easier for me to think about this, Bruce Wayne to me is a very living human being, but he's really composed of dots on a page. There are four main colors in the ink process of printing comic books, and the stories as I was growing up, gave me an opportunity to process through and to think about this in a philosophical way. There was a story from when I was a kid where, whatever the premise of it is, in some supernatural way, Bruce Wayne is given the opportunity to go to some other reality, some alternate timeline or something, some parallel universe, and he can spare the Bruce Wayne of that world if he can intervene and he can prevent the murder of this little Bruce Wayne's parents. So he can stop all of that pain, all that trauma, all that everything, which he knows so well. So the story is filled with this kind of hashkafic, if I can use that term, discussion of, is this really the best thing for this reality's Bruce Wayne? If his parents, in fact, are not killed, he'll grow up to be the lazy, spoiled playboy that he, in our reality, only pretends to be. So perhaps for his neshama, is the best thing for him, the person he would ultimately become, his parents' murder? Now, to think about that in real terms with real people, with my family, Am Yisrael in Vilna, in Europe, to think in those ways would be disrespectful, would be unconscionable, would be impossible to think about. But here I was as a kid, and I was thinking about that. Well, wait a second. Sometimes tragedy is the spur to extraordinary accomplishment, to development, to the ennoblement of character, the refinement of our soul. I would be thinking about those kinds of things. The Batman character saved my sanity and formed the foundation of a lot of the way I look at the world. I've encountered other Holocaust survivor children who have dealt with the trauma in other kinds of ways. In sometimes what I think mine is completely psychologically normal. In fact, I think it's awesome. Of course, that's a self-serving analysis. But I've seen other people who have dealt with it in other ways. I know one lady, she's a little older than I am. She used Barbie, the image of Barbie, this fantasized, this idealized world, no issues, no problems. I admit I'm not familiar with Barbie, but I imagine it's like that, where everything is just surface and there are no real issues. So she developed an obsession with that. It helped her cope. I'm not here to judge. I used mine. I think the idea of the Batman was the closest parallel in microcosm that I could identify that allowed me to deal with all of this Holocaust baggage that I have.